Among the many problems that plague our nation, I think one of the most dangerous is the problem of this politics of hysteria. The politics of hysteria essentially has political observers on all sides of the aisle. I don't care if they're left-wing, right-wing, conservative, progressive, socialist, I don't care what they are. Has them view their political opponents in terms of a caricature, and by viewing them as a caricature, that gives them justification to exaggerate or misquote any position their political opponents have. The right-wing version of this would be, I guess, libs of TikTok, where everyone assumes that the strongest people on the left happen to be blue-haired, mentally ill kids screaming into their phones. I will tell you that those are not the strongest advocates on the left. Or the left-wing version would be, I suppose, the Lincoln Project, or other things, such as what we're going to review today, such as misconstruing the positions of conservatives to go to the worst way possible. I remember when years ago there was a lot of conversation over affordable health care and universal health care in America. The many people on the left accused conservatives of wanting to get rid of poor people's health care, and they caricaturized the conservative position on universal health care as them wanting to throw grandmother off a cliff. This is obviously absurd, but this emotional, evocative politics of hysteria has an impact. And so Gavin Newsom recently published an advertisement onto his Twitter account about abortion. And this advertisement is about 30 seconds long. We will go through it. I'm going to walk you through it step by step. And I'm going to demonstrate how this advertisement is just another example of this politics of hysteria. And as we analyze it, I'm going to give you some tools that you can use to have a more rational approach to politics, and also to better understand the positions of those that you may not agree with. Now, let me just say this. I am very pro-life. I am incredibly pro-life. Having said that, I'm going to put aside my own moral conviction in this moment, and I'm going to act as an impartial observer who is going to assess the statements and arguments made in this advertisement, which I think, by the way, is pretty absurd. Well, that's a different story, different day, for their own merits. So without further ado, let us review this advertisement about abortion. Small context. Abortion, ever since the fall of Roe v. Wade, has been likened sort of to the coming of the Handmaid's Tale, this sort of second-class status of women who will be forced to do drastic things to preserve their bodily autonomy. At least this is the narrative the left has painted for people. And I think you'll see a lot of this narrative on display in this video. It should also be noted that the Alabama law in particular is addressing people who organize entire groups of women to go ahead and travel to other states to get abortions. This is primarily targeted at NGOs who seek to stoke this kind of stuff, like Planned Parenthood. Now look, personally, I think people have the freedom to move and travel how they wish. But what I don't think that it is a wise thing for NGOs to push a certain social idea, which may very well be immoral, and then use their resources to organize that idea. So if women want to go ahead and go to a different state, they can go to a different state. This law does not stop them, or this proposed bill does not stop them. What it does stop is political organizations from attempting to try to engineer something grander than that. Again, personally, I wouldn't be pushing for this kind of law, but we should understand the context of this before we go ahead and go a little crazy and try to claim things that aren't true. So without further ado, let us begin watching this advertisement.
We're almost there. You're gonna make it.
Cops coming. Okay, stop it right there. Okay. Already, we see several things that we need to address, several symbols we need to address that convey their own message. You have two women. These women look panicked. They look in distress. They look angsty. Now, what they're trying to say is that this is going to be the condition of women that live in states that outlaw abortion, without realizing that the pro-life position has never been, in a time of pregnancy or in a time of crisis in a woman's life, that women should have absolutely no resources to soothe their worries or soothe their pains. Crisis pregnancy centers are actually quite prominent in many conservative states. And what a lot of people on the left will say is they'll say, well, crisis pregnancy centers are simply a way to convince ladies not to have an abortion. Well, crisis pregnancy centers are simply a way to actually inform and educate the woman about what is happening within her womb. And not only that, they also offer many resources that make it easier and less stressful for a woman who is dealing with the prospect of having an abortion. And yet, they are painting this narrow picture that all women under a regime, I guess, that outlaws abortion are going to be faced with this uncertainty, with this angst. It is an example of the politics of hysteria because it is a straw man, it is a misrepresentation, a caricature of a position, an assertion of a reality that does not and will not exist. Now, I could even go on about the realism of this. How in the world? Actually, let's pause on that. Let's just keep going.
Trump Republicans want to criminalize young Alabama women who travel for reproductive care.
Miss, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle.
Okay.
Take a pregnancy test.
I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle and take a pregnancy. Okay, so first, I just want to say how stereotypical this officer seems. It could be a female officer pulling them over. It could be any other gender. But again, when you're trying to craft a narrative within the politics of hysteria, the key thing that you don't want to do, you want to omit as many variables as possible that will be beneficial to your opponent's argument. This is how, again, straw men work. When you take an argument your opponent A didn't make, and also, secondarily, B is perhaps even the weakest of what your opponent could say. The opposite of stillmanning, where you try to provide the strongest of what your opponent could say. You want to do whatever you can to artificially tweak the claim to make it seem weak. So there's rhetorical manipulation that makes claims seem weak, but then there is just outright fiction that doesn't even address the claim in the first place. It just paints something in a way that is just wildly absurd. When there is a prima facie falsehood being presented to you that looks nothing like what is being advocated for, then you really have to ask yourself, what really are they responding to? They're responding to an idea in their head that doesn't correspond with reality. And again, this is a distinctive characteristic of the politics of hysteria. Conservatives, and at least prominent conservatives, have not argued, for example, for universal health care, that grandmas shouldn't have universal health care. And they have not argued in terms of Social Security reform that poor people shouldn't have Social Security. What they have said is that there should be viable alternatives provided in terms of health care and Social Security that are not going to be as harrowing, as broken, and as corrupt as the government-provided current solutions to those problems. But again, that's caricaturized. I have not seen a single conservative say on the abortion debate that women should be punished, that women should be taken out back because they go and try to have an abortion. I have not seen that. Maybe that is the case. But the point is, even if that is the case in some cases, the primary argument of the pro-life movement is not to punish women. The argument of the pro-life movement is to preserve the life within the woman as they see it, by providing her resources, counseling, help in a larger way that goes beyond her own predilections of thinking and seeing the situation around her pregnancy. That's what we're seeing here. But it is just so perplexing to me that all of that is omitted for this boogeyman scenario here. It's absolutely absurd. But also realism. How in the world would this cop know the woman was going across state lines to have a pregnancy test, or to have an abortion? In fact, reasonable suspicion is a doctrine that is very important when it comes to police stops. And some may argue that it's not followed, but in general, it is a doctrine that restrains what cops can do. So where is the reasonable suspicion of this officer to pull up to a random call out in the middle of nowhere and demand that the people in the vehicle take a pregnancy test? There's no reasonable suspicion. There's nothing. Seriously. How in the world are they going to know if you're traveling across state lines to have an abortion if you have not previously advertised it? Is this advertisement not telling us the whole story? Is this woman an activist who does what the activists say and shout your abortion? Is she doing that? Because if she's doing that, there are a wide range of other problems that we have that have nothing to do with this totally made-up scenario. We'll address more of that in a second. Let's keep going.
By taking action at righttotravel.org. Campaign for Democracy Group is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Again, the harrowing look on her face, the desperation, the angst, all of this is just one giant straw man. But again, we have to go back to the politics of hysteria. I think that an unchecked imagination is one of the most dangerous things to the pursuit of man's intellectual well-being and also the pursuit of his social well-being, both of which are connected. When the intellect is refined and it is grounded in sound principles, then your ability to interact with society, which is a lot of it is dependent on your intellect, how you think, how you process things, will then also be refined, and it'll enrich the people you're around as opposed to taking away from them. This whole idea of social parasites, emotional vampires are the exact opposite. Their intellect is so low, or it is tuned to a frequency that is antisocial, that perhaps sociopathy or psychopathy, and so much that it takes from the people that are around them. Well, what we've seen here with leftism is that this new leftism, post-1960s, post-Herbert Marcuse, puts a emphasis on rejecting the external world and replacing it with the internal world. The internal world is how you feel, your lived experience, and all of your feelings being, as the kids say it these days, valid. Whereas the external world are, rather, how does this work in observable reality? What are the factors to a particular thing? What can I learn through observation? What can I learn by applying my reason, my rational faculties, outside of my own experience? And when your focus is on the external world, you will find things that don't conform to your current understanding, because human beings are always growing. You will find things that may even offend your sensibilities. But what you will not find is a sort of libido dominandi, a dominance of your own emotional passions over everything else in the world, because the external world is separate from the world of your heart. But if you can't get your heart in check, you can't interact with society well, which is why you see people that have safe spaces, right, on college campuses, which is why you see people that say that speech codes and hate speech was a cry from the 90s, because there was debates back in the 90s about if we need to have hate speech to protect vulnerable populations, while the sort of postmodernist 2020s version of that is that we need to have hate speech to protect my sensibilities from being offended. The reason you have all that is because the internal world dominates our politics. So the internal mind of the left is that conservatives have a desire to oppress women, but the external world doesn't quite line up with that. We have to ensure that our internal world lines up with the external world. This is a concept called the direction of fit in philosophy. And the direction of fit, before I close here, basically says that beliefs will be driven to fit with reality. But if you don't have beliefs, but you instead have desires, your desires will try to conform reality to it. Let me say that again. Under the philosophical concept of the direction of fit, your beliefs fit reality. But when you reject, but when you reject that, or you go to the corollary of that, your desires make reality fit it. That is the essence of the politics of hysteria. That is the essence of what's going on here. So it's not just absurd because it's wrong. It's absurd because it reflects an internal conception so many people on the left have about abortion and how about the pro-life movement that is easily disproven by empirical, observable fact. If you want to go ahead and critique a law, very fine. Go ahead and critique the law, but don't try to misconstrue an entire position, in this case, the outlawing of abortion, with things that it doesn't actually mean. And that is all I will say about this, my friends. I think that we have to all make sure we are constantly battling for the truth and not being a slave to our own preconceptions. My friends, if you like this video, or if you want to help me get my message out there, like, share, comment, subscribe, do whatever you can so we can make this channel successful. Donate to me if you want to. PayPal, Patreon, all that is in the comment section down below. My friends, study history, study philosophy, study history, study philosophy, and remain morally convicted, and please stay pensive. Bye, guys.